My best friend and I had a car accident at the same time. In the end, she survived with my heart and married the guy I loved the most. And my ruined grave only gets visits from my mentally challenged dad. Everyone is about to forget I ever existed. How many days have passed since I died? I don't remember. I felt a bit dazed when I saw Louis adjusting Floria's white veil. Turns out even ghosts can feel heartbroken. Just like the day of the car accident, in the hospital, Louis walked right through me to hug Floria tightly. They were both grateful for surviving the ordeal, while only my dad dragged his somewhat crippled leg, carrying my belongings out of the hospital, his tears soaking them. After all, he's the one who signed the consent form for the heart donation, because I was already dying, while Floria had a slim chance and a successful match. Even though she ended up with paralyzed legs, at least she lived. Unlike me, who lost my lover, my family, everything. On a full moon night, the Lin family was busy preparing for Floria's wedding, while my dad went back to our small bar that he and I used to run with great care. He breathed on the glass that was bathed in the same moonlight, and drew a smiling face, before wiping the already clean tables repeatedly, just like I used to do when I was alive. I watched him skeptically, but couldn't get too close. After all that, he turned and walked into the small door of the kitchen. Then, I watched as fire engulfed the whole bar, and he never came out again. The man who promised to take care of my dad, Louis, was celebrating the addition of a new family member. They were about to marry the bride. I hated them. If I was given another chance, I'd make them pay. Suddenly, I felt dizzy, and a massive force twisted and compressed my body. Next, a bright white light appeared before my eyes. The glare made it impossible to open my eyes. No idea how long it lasted, but when I opened my eyes again, I found myself wearing a Hello Kitty scarf, holding a rag, working in my dad's bar. Louis and Floria were seated at opposite ends. I traveled back to the day I first met them. I couldn't believe it and slapped myself hard, feeling the burning pain. I hugged my dad over and over to confirm, and he smiled, responding that my dad was indeed there. Only then did I believe that I really traveled back to before all the evil began. Even the calendar on the wall showed that day. According to how things should go, a group of hooligans would soon harass Floria, and my dad and I would fail to stop them, ultimately needing Louis to step in and drive them away. From then on, Floria became my best friend, and she loved Louis deeply, always asking me to play matchmaker for them. And it's their love that directly led to my family's tragedy. Seeing the people I loathed again, I decided to stand by this time. I turned and walked into the kitchen without hesitation, helping Dad wash vegetables. Seeing me not helping in the front, he stuttered, "Tired? If you're tired, go rest." I wiped the tears from my eyes and told him, "I'm not tired. Even if I washed vegetables for my dad for a lifetime, I wouldn't get tired." As expected, arguments broke out in the front. Floria was calling for help. Dad heard the noise and was about to walk out, but I grabbed his arm. "Ignore them. Let Louis handle it. Whether they live or die is their problem. I don't want to be a humble side character anymore." Floria's cries grew louder, and I clenched my hands in anger. I wouldn't go, even if she died today. She deserved it. After a scream, my dad, who had been watching from the doorway, rushed out. I worriedly looked out and saw Louis wasn't in the hall. Floria was surrounded by hooligans, her eyes red from tears. My dad, dragging his crippled leg, limped over, smiled, and said, "Everything is on the house today." Dad didn't understand what these men wanted. He always thought as long as he offered free drinks, they'd give him some face. But this time, things were different. They looked at him viciously, pushed him to the ground without any courtesy. "Get lost, moron. Do you know who you're messing with, daring to oppose us?" One of them picked up a liquor bottle, ready to smash it over my dad's head, while Floria stood frozen in fear. She was a troublemaker, dragging my dad down again in this life. I grabbed a kitchen knife from the cutting board and rushed out. The blade clashed with the glass, spraying shards everywhere. The man was caught off guard, crouching and clutching his bleeding eye. Seeing this, a thug from the side pulled out a knife. At the door, Louis finally arrived, holding a delivery box, witnessing the scene. He dropped the package and punched the thug in the temple, looking like he aimed to kill. No wonder, his punch knocked the guy unconscious. Floria called the police in a panic, while Louis stood still, his face expressionless. She hid in his arms, trembling like a scared bunny. The moment I met Louis's gaze, my heart ached instinctively. No matter how many times I saw him, I couldn't help but feel those flutters. "Louis, how many more times can you save your princess?" In the end, we were all taken to the police station to give statements. When questioned by the police, I said without hesitation, maybe her lifestyle's to blame for getting involved with those thugs. It's her personal grudge, nothing to do with our bar. I slammed my hand on the table, and I want her to compensate for all the damages and medical fees. The two cops exchanged a speechless look. They'd probably never seen anyone clearer themselves of responsibility than me. But that didn't matter. Compared to what I'd do to her next, this was just an appetizer. Outside the interrogation room, Louis and Floria were already waiting. She brightened up upon seeing me, rushing over to grab my hand. Floria grabbed my hand and listened to the police. We all went to the same nearby university. What a coincidence. We ended up in the police station together, so now we're friends. Friends. A plain girl like me, with a tragic family history, doesn't deserve to be friends with someone like Floria, who was spoiled with money from a young age. She just sees me as a servant, a way to show off her status. In my previous life, I thought I had found true friendship with her, even if it meant being her sidekick. But I've seen through their game. Do they really think I'll let them play me for a fool again? Fine, I'll be your good sister again. How you hurt me before, I'll return it in kind this time. I gave her a smile. Sure, everything happened, just like in my past life. When the new students were assigned to classes, Floria and I were in the same class. Louis, the student body president of our college, was worshipped by all the new students, including Floria. This handsome senior was so friendly and efficient, it was hard not to admire him. The opportunity for Floria and Louis to get closer came during the college's welcome party. Like a radiant swan, Floria performed a duet dance with Louis. They were praised by all the students, further pushing me out of their circle. I was once your closest confidant, which means I know exactly where to strike to hurt the most. Just like how you two treated me in the past. So, after thinking it through, just before going on stage, I handed Floria a glass of sweet milk mixed with ground peanuts. Floria, have some milk to boost your energy. I wish you a great performance. In my previous life, I found out later that she's allergic to peanuts. An allergic reaction would cause her throat to swell, making it hard to breathe, and she could even suffocate. This was the perfect method to give her a deep lesson, without anyone suspecting anything. Floria looked at the milk and pursed her lips. Though I usually don't drink anything before performing, I'll drink this since it's from you. My hand froze, my face showing a half smile. I cursed myself 100 times in my head. Don't be fooled by her. She's the one who ruined everything for you. Finally, I handed her the milk. She drank it without any hesitation. I know I'm being cruel, but she needs to feel that sense of impending doom. As I waited backstage with Floria, Louis was there too. Dressed in his dance attire, he looked like a prince from a fairy tale. The moment Louis saw Floria, he praised her without holding back. That hair clip looks beautiful. I touched my hair where I wore the same type of clip adorned with yellow daisies. Floria was thrilled and shook my arm excitedly. Caroline, he said, the hair clip you gave me is beautiful. These two always trampled over me to play their flirtatious games. It's really disgusting. The announcer called them to the stage. I told Floria, go on. Tonight you'll be the most beautiful white swan. Her eyes sparkled as she walked toward the stage, looking back at me. White swan, wait until you turn into an ugly duckling. The lights came on, and their synchronized moves drew cheers from the audience as they leaped and twirled. For a moment, the light shone on me, but only for a moment. Since meeting Floria, I was destined to live in darkness. A thud sounded on stage, and the audience stood up, straining to see what was happening. Floria, who always prided herself on her beauty, now sat on the stage with her lips swollen like sausages. Moments later, her forehead creased as she clawed at her throat, her face turning red. Louis panicked. Normally composed, he shouted frantically at the staff, call an ambulance. Call an ambulance. Louis, is your princess still beautiful? If you two stay together, it'll only lead to her demise. Do you think you'll escape unscathed? The party turned into chaos. Hidden in the shadows backstage, I tore off my hair clip and threw it on the ground. I picked some fruits randomly from a stall outside the hospital and walked inside. Floria had been saved. It didn't kill her, but it gave her a taste of near death. I pushed open the hospital room door and saw Louis comforting her with genuine concern. I stifled my emotions and walked up to place the fruit on Floria's bedside. What happened? You had me so worried. Floria looked back at me, her voice still raspy. It's nothing, probably just an allergy. The doctors couldn't find the cause. Maybe I accidentally ate some seafood before the performance. Don't worry about it. Before I could respond, Louis started comforting her again. No matter what, I'll be here for you and take care of you. Louis, why are you in such a rush? You won't escape what's coming to you. Leaving the hospital, I forged an anonymous letter, accusing Louis of irresponsible behavior, hoping to get him kicked out of his prestigious student council position and bring him down a notch. But before I could send it, I found out that Louis had already resigned voluntarily due to the incident at the party, stating he felt responsible for Floria's condition. He looked after her non-stop, taking care of her every need. I wanted to laugh. What was meant to kill their relationship only ended up bringing them closer. How could I not hate them? If God won't help me, then I just haven't been ruthless enough. As expected, Floria fell head over heels for Louis, wrapped up in his constant care. She started pestering me to write love letters for her, using my talent to weave their romance. In my past life, my deepest feelings were conveyed to Louis through those letters. Would the wind of summer meet the snow of winter? It's never meant to be. Just like how Louis would never fall for Caroline. Then, Floria received a reply. The words in the letter were just as sincere. They seemed destined for each other, and I was merely the bridge between them, the messenger pigeon, limited to carrying their love notes. Back then, how could I not be happy? Every word of Louis's letters was engraved in my heart, even though the real recipient was Floria. In this life, you still want to use me, trample on me. No way I'm letting you have your way. You wanna play? Fine, I'm game. I wrote on the letter paper with bold strokes. Louis, someone as trashy as you deserves to be lonely forever, to never get the love you want until you die. Any guy who got such a letter would be completely turned off. I watched Floria skip away with the letter I wrote, mumbling, I'll treat you to your favorite fried chicken by the school gate later. I nodded, feeling only the thrill of revenge. The next day before class, Floria came to me, face downcast. What to do? I drank too much last night, and let it slip when I delivered the letter. What do you mean? I asked her. I directly said it was you who wrote the love letter. Me? How is this different from before? Did she already take precautions? I couldn't see any flaw in Floria's regretful expression, but Louis's face didn't look too good the next time he saw us. Several times he stood next to Floria, looking at me with those eyes, as if he wanted to say something, but didn't. My letter had an effect. I successfully disgusted him, but was it enough? Far from it. If it weren't for Louis, there wouldn't have been the car accident, and I wouldn't have died. After all, Floria and I rushed to the scene upon hearing Louis was being held hostage, only for a speeding car to end everything. In other words, Louis was indirectly the reason Floria was paralyzed too. Yet my death fulfilled their love, allowing them to cherish each other over my dead body. In the dormitory, I took out and wiped the knife from my drawer. The cold glint excited me. If things are destined to come to this, better you die than me, Louis. Why should I be the one to die when you're so despicable? Caroline, what are you doing? The dorm door swung open as Floria danced her way to me playfully. I nonchalantly hid the knife under the table. Her face beaming with excitement, she said, Louis wants to help celebrate my birthday. I forced a smile and tried to look happy. Really? That's great. Floria flipped through the letters from Louis like treasures, saying, yes, and the holidays just around the corner. Help me think of a good way to celebrate. Last time, for Floria's birthday, I suggested Disney, but due to my poorly timed period, I had to go back to the hotel early, doubled over in pain. Floria and Louis watched the entire fireworks show. The romantic atmosphere must have made them hold each other. I couldn't even imagine the scene. Later, I saw Louis' post, came to Disney with the one I like. Alone in my bed, I cried endlessly, torturing myself with thoughts of their moments under the fireworks. I pulled myself from those memories and mumbled to her, whatever, celebrating at school is good enough. Before I finished, Floria grabbed my hand. Let's go to Disney. Watch the fireworks show, my treat. Do I endure this again? I'd better ask if my knife agrees. Sure. Seeing Louis again, he had some scrapes on his face, looking pretty banged up. I didn't bother asking why. In this life, we're enemies. Ignoring him, I took Floria's arm. She twirled around Louis like a child, their heights matching perfectly. Entering the park, my worries momentarily faded with the vibrant scenes. I immersed myself, until Floria suddenly mentioned she had something to handle. She had hinted before that this Disney trip might have some issues, and now she was leaving. Louis showed concern. I'll go with you. But Floria refused, patting our arms. Tickets are so expensive. If you two don't make the most of it, I won't sleep well. Thus, our trio became just Louis and me. I clutched the knife in my pocket, waiting for the right moment. After a warm rush, I knew it had come. Despite being prepared, the periodic pain was quite unbearable. Keeping my head down, trying not to stand out among the happy crowd, my mind filled with bitterness and anger. When the scent of ginger tea reached my nose, I looked up to see Louis standing there, holding a thermos. He stepped closer when I didn't react. Carefully letting go of the knife, I extended my hand. He placed a box of ibuprofen in my palm. Was this for me? Drink this. Floria told me before we came that she might have her period soon, so I prepared it. Again, Floria's grace spared me. This false kindness hurt worse than death. After taking the medicine, I returned my hand to the sharp knife. The castle lights grew more dazzling, and fireworks filled the sky, causing the crowd to cheer. Some couples started to embrace, making me slightly envious. If we didn't hate each other so much, could we also embrace? Are the fireworks beautiful? Louis asked, now so close, the crowd nudging him against me. By the fireworks light, I could see his eyes, deep like the ocean, staring at me. Beautiful, I said, referring to him. Louis smiled, becoming even more beautiful. I still couldn't control myself and fell for him. Do you think princesses all live in castles? I asked him. Louis, your princess is in a castle. You're really lucky, aren't you? Louis' handsome eyebrows knitted slightly, which showed he was really thinking hard about it. Not necessarily, he said. Elsa was rejected by everyone and ended up creating her own ice castle. His response was unexpected. Maybe he hadn't thought about how Elsa couldn't even touch her loved ones. I looked down and didn't look at him anymore. Caroline, he suddenly called my name. I don't like princesses. The most spectacular firework shot into the sky, deafening, drowning out Louis's words, ringing in my ears. Louis repeated, I don't like princesses, The phone rang suddenly, breaking the awkward atmosphere. I fumbled to answer. Caroline, it's Aunt Alice next door. You need to come back and take a look. Some thugs smashed your dad's shop. I called the cops, and they took a few away, but your dad's in the hospital now. Except for the thugs who harassed Floria at first, no one else came to mess with the shop. But I really didn't expect them to hold such a grudge. Even after so long, they still sought revenge. Louis heard what was happening on my call. Before I could react, he grabbed my hand and said, I have a car. I'll drive you. I let him lead me through the bustling crowd. The colorful lights reflected on his somewhat serious face. At that moment, I almost fooled myself into thinking we were in love. Maybe the summer breeze can really reach places with snow and melt an icy heart. Louis was more anxious than I was. His car sped like in Fast and Furious, turning hours into minutes. When I pushed open the hospital room door, my dad saw me and immediately smiled. He was missing several teeth, his face swollen and bruised. I staggered forward and hugged his weak body, his constant laughter echoing in my ears. I knew he didn't want me to worry. My dad was always like that. Do you have any other injuries? I asked anxiously, checking him over and over. My dad just waved it off with a smile. No injuries, not a scratch. I looked at his battered face, my heart aching. Dad, did you bring any money? I asked with concern. The priority was to pay the hospital bill and get my dad proper treatment. He pouted and looked aggrieved. They took it all. I emptied all my pockets, but only managed to put together $500. Definitely not enough for the hospital bill. Just when I was feeling desperate, Louis came in with a nurse. The nurse entered with a big smile. As soon as you left, he went to the admin office and paid all the expenses, even hired a nurse for your dad. I've worked here a long time, and I've seen all kinds of people. Guys like him, really rare. My face heated up. I looked at Louis and said, thank you. I'll work hard to pay you back. Louis replied casually, it's a small amount, don't worry about it. The money in my hand felt slippery with sweat, my already fragile pride crumbling. For me, earning that much money took a month of hard work. For Louis and Floria, rich kids, it was just pocket change. They already have everything. So why did they have to ruin my shattered life too? I couldn't accept it. Once my dad was asleep, I decided to go back to the pub and clean up the mess. Louis insisted on coming along. By the time we got to the pub, it was almost daylight. Glass littered the entrance. Tables and chairs were all overturned. Tears welled up in my eyes. How scared must my dad have been when the pub was trashed? Despite knowing he couldn't win, he still used his body to protect the only thing that could support my future. He doesn't understand love, but he spent his whole life thinking of me. And because of my absurd love, I pushed him into the fire. I looked up at Louis. He was silent, bending down to set all the tables and chairs back in place. Even you can see it now, right? How much we ordinary people suffer, unlike you rich kids, I said to Louis while wiping the floor. Louis paused. I'm a little confused. I forced a smile. I didn't mean anything by it. Just that we're from different worlds. My dad's not very smart. We're dirt poor. Without the little money from this pub, I probably couldn't even go to school. But Louis, he had top-tier education from the start, backed by substantial wealth. He and Floria are from the same world. Got it. Let's continue cleaning. Louis interrupted, not saying another word, his movements getting heavier. Maybe he was tired of my complaining. But then, why did he pay my dad's medical bills? Could it just be because I'm Floria's best friend? I continued scrubbing the floor, each step slow, tears falling. Fireworks eventually fade, but the emotions they spark grab hold of my heart. I threw the knife onto the counter, like tossing away the weight on my chest. Louis, my downfall comes from loving you too much. By the time we were almost done, the The sun was fully up. Louis looked exhausted, yawning repeatedly. I jogged to open the door of the small room where my dad usually stayed, feeling a bit timid. If you don't mind, you can rest here in my dad's room. It's just that it's a converted compartment, so it might be a bit small. Louis waved his hand. No need. Before he even finished speaking, I had already looked down and gently closed the door. He quickly changed his mind. It's not that I mind. I'll just rest here for a bit then. You should rest too. At noon, I'll take you to find someone to fix the glass in the shop. After saying that, he immediately dove into my dad's tiny room without a hint of hesitation. Seeing his tall frame unable to stretch out on the bed, I couldn't help but find him a bit cute. Soon, I could hear his steady breathing from inside. He must have been exhausted from driving and working all night. I lay my head on the table, planning to take a short nap, but when Floria's call woke me up, it was already noon. She was heading over right away after hearing about last night. I knew she'd be mad that I had created too many chances to be alone with Louis. What I didn't expect was that her first words when she arrived were, "Sell the bar right now." Our argument woke up Louis. Floria stared in disbelief as he walked out of the room. "Did you two last night?" I reluctantly explained. He was just helping me clean up the bar. He was too tired, so he went in to rest for a bit. "Then sell the bar," Floria demanded, her tone imperious. "Why, this bar means everything to my dad. How could I sell it? Who was she to boss me around like this?" Floria impatiently plopped down in a chair. "You have to sell it. Wasn't what happened last night enough?" "What happened last night? Louis and I were together the whole time, but Louis belongs to you. From the start, you've been using me to get him, wanting me to be the sacrificial lamb for your love. You're despicable." I turned away, refusing to look at her. I didn't expect her to slam the table and shout at me, "You'll be stuck with this broken bar your whole life. What future do you think you have?" I looked up in shock, seeing in her eyes nothing but disdain. So, this was how little I mattered to her, how worthless. Maybe Floria realized she had gone too far. Her once straight posture slumped. "Sorry, I got a bit anxious, but I couldn't hold it in anymore." I snapped. "Floria, yes, you're noble. You were born rich. You can define anything however you want. You can command a servant to be your tool, just like me now. But that doesn't mean you get to decide my life, to sacrifice me to pave your way." Floria's expression darkened, her tone lowering a couple of notches. "So, this is how you see me?" "Yes, I don't want to be your servant anymore. You've always clung to me, but I've wanted to avoid you from the start. I don't want another tragedy in my life. Can you just let me go?" "Really? I wish you were dead." I finished in one breath and closed my eyes. I didn't want to see her reaction. If this was the end, I just hated that I hadn't been harsher. When I opened my eyes again, Floria had vanished from the bar. Even Louis said, "You shouldn't have hurt her with those words." Me, I'm ruthless. Is my ruthlessness anything compared to her heartlessness in snatching people away? Compared to you two turning your backs on me and happily planning a wedding? I said nothing more. I still didn't sell the bar, and Louis kept coming over to help, but I knew he was just trying to speak on Floria's behalf. My dignity, in their eyes, was something to be discarded if necessary, but I wouldn't be their sacrifice anymore. Yet, I never expected Floria to disappear from my life. She didn't even come to class once. I got what I wanted. I was free from Floria's entanglement, so I wouldn't perish with her. But why wasn't I happy? What was bothering me? The answer came with a phone call that felt like a stabbing pain in my heart. "Hello, are you Floria's family?" "No." I was about to hang up in annoyance. The voice on the other end continued, "Floria left your number as her family contact. We haven't been able to reach her." Family? What a laughable classification. What's the matter? I'm Floria's attending physician. She had a peanut milk allergy last time. Generally, for peanut allergies, I recommend further testing for other allergen sensitivities. Many people react to multiple allergens. Peanut milk allergy. Wasn't she the one who said she didn't know the cause? After hanging up, I called Louis. "So, both you and Floria knew the truth about her allergy back then, right?" Silence for a moment, then a murmured, "Yes." "Then why did you both act ignorant, playing saints? Were you using this chance to foster your relationship, making me your stepping stone again? Or were you giving me an opportunity?" I didn't dare think. The phone was silent. I bowed my head, finally making up my mind. "Can you help set up a meeting with Floria?" His low voice merely hummed in response. We arranged to meet at a temple known for granting wishes. I hoped this mountain trek and a wish might give me some answers, unraveling the knot in my heart. When Floria arrived, she had a large bag on her back. From the moment Louis saw her, he naturally went over to take it from her, like a couple who had been together for a long time. I felt out of place. When she walked up to me, I was at a loss for words, unsure how to break the awkward silence. Floria got ahead of me and said impatiently, "Let's go." Her tone wasn't very friendly, but at least she broke the ice. The road to the temple was long, like every wish that wouldn't come true easily. If you wanted something, you'd have to give something in return. We were both out of breath halfway up. I hadn't eaten breakfast that morning, and my stomach was growling. Floria rolled her eyes and took the bag from Louis. She rummaged through it and pulled out a package. It was wrapped generously to keep it warm, and when she took it out, it was still steaming. It was fried chicken from the school gate. Floria pouted and handed the fried chicken to me. "I bought it on the way. Don't think I got it just for you." She hadn't gone to school for days. How could she have passed by coincidentally? I mumbled a response, my voice choking up. Tears dropped onto the fried chicken, and I awkwardly said, "So greasy." She laughed out loud, and we just stared at each other. No explanation needed. Laughter pacified our past grievances. Floria then took out lots of my favorite snacks from her bag and laid them in front of me. Louis smiled comforting. I never looked at him directly, but my peripheral vision drew his image 1,000 times over. Something inside me was quietly shifting. Maybe it had always been my obsession at play. These two, at least for now, didn't seem to plunge me into despair. But at that time, I didn't know. Later, I imagined 1,000 ways they could betray me. In the end, it was the one outcome I couldn't accept. I was munching on the chicken, lost in thought. A few girls passing by had surrounded Louis, vying for his contact information. I was used to it. A good-looking guy like him was bound to be admired. But Louis turned them down. The girls didn't back off. Louis frowned and raised his hand to block them. "I have someone I like." I barely caught his words when Floria stepped up to pull the girls away. "Hey, what are you doing? He's already taken." The girls glanced at Floria awkwardly and left, whispering. I was just choking on the chicken, feeling uneasy. Were they confessing their feelings for each other? Floria protecting Louis was flawless. Maybe I had given myself a role in this relationship that didn't belong to me. I was always an outsider. I don't remember how we climbed the rest of the mountain. My mind was tangled in thoughts that shouldn't be there. When they each wrote their wishes and hung them on the wishing rack and walked away, I came to my senses, driven by something unexplainable. I walked to the rack filled with red ribbons and pulled down Floria's wish plaque. In delicate handwriting, it said, "I hope Caroline ends up with the person she likes and lives well." That wish was too heavy. Floria, you'd have to give up someone you love. Would you? Impossible. I searched for Louis's wish plaque, but found nothing. From afar, Floria called my name. I took one last look at that place filled with people's wishes and left. Days passed mundanely. Floria remained carefree, sending me letters more frequently. Every time she got a reply, she'd show it to me right away, seeming uninterested herself and doing trivial things. What I longed for, she treated indifferently, but my days were numbered. Even my sorrowful days were running out. What's the difference being reborn? I was still so humble, unable to change anything. Too many unanswered questions from back then haunted me. Actually, when I heard Louis got kidnapped, I wondered. One moment he was helping in the front hall, the next he was gone. Then came the threat to his life. With the date looming, I decided to install cameras in the bar. Maybe helping Floria and Louis find happiness would be my good deed. Sacrificing willingly sounded better than being forced. My life wouldn't ripple. That was a supporting role's fate. A heroic sacrifice for Louis to remember me. Perhaps that wouldn't be a loss. I found an excuse to send Floria to another city. If she didn't come, she wouldn't share my doom. Her dancing legs wouldn't be bound to a wheelchair. The day came quickly. I was still busy in the kitchen, but I kept an eye on the front hall. Sure enough, Louis, who was at the counter, had disappeared. I opened my phone's surveillance app, seeing Louis getting a call at the counter before leaving. The call came to the bar. Were they here to cause trouble? And Louis went alone to handle it. Was the incident not Louis's fault from the start? My heart pounded uncontrollably. Had I been wrong all along? Was no one to blame for my death? I couldn't imagine what Louis might face next. I rushed to the door and nearly collided with someone coming in. I looked up and saw Floria. "Floria, you're not supposed to be here." Floria had a bit of smugness in her eyes, but her voice was full of anger. "You want to send me away and face everything by yourself, right?" I had no idea why she suddenly said something like that. I tried to explain, but she cut me off, raising her hand. "From now on, no matter what happens, I'm going to be with you." The phone rang on time at 12:10. Just like it did back then. The voice on the other end was sinister. "Louis is at the abandoned factory on the outskirts. If you don't come, you'll find his body by the river this afternoon." Then the call ended. "Are you sure you want to go?" Floria asked me. I looked into her watery eyes, and a wave of sadness washed over me, making my eyes moist. "Floria, You don't understand. You don't understand. This is my fate. I can't abandon Louis. Fine. Floria cut me off. If you have to go, let's minimize the risks. We almost spoke in unison. Watch out for cars. A bit of doubt swirled in my mind, but I couldn't think too much about it then. Floria grabbed my hand and warned me. The place they're sending us to is an old steel factory. I'll drive, and when we get there, don't get out of the car until we're at the entrance. Yeah, if we stay in the car, we won't get hit. At least cars can't get inside the factory. On the way, I called the police, but until I saw Louis, I didn't dare to stop for a second. We had to race against time. Floria floored it all the way to the outskirts. Houses and cars became fewer and fewer, and the grass grew taller, almost half my height. Floria's car stopped, just inches from the factory doors. We got out and crouched down to sneak inside. The place had been deserted for ages, and even the air smelled of rust. Dust floated up from the ground as we stepped in, but I didn't see a soul. Could it be? Before I could finish, a force shoved me off balance. I turned to see Floria gritting her teeth, using all her strength to push me away. Beside her, a man with a scary scar over his eye drove a knife into her, again and again. The knife was initially meant for me. Floria's eyes were on me, full of reluctance. Even as I fell to the ground, I could clearly see her looking at me. My nose hit the ground hard, causing a burning pain. I pushed through the pain and ran towards Floria, but the blood-stained knife was coming for me too. An iron rod whizzed past my ear and struck the scar-faced man, knocking him to the ground, splitting his scalp open. I followed the rod's trajectory and saw Louis running towards me, with several men behind him. The scar-faced man spat, picked up his knife, and chased after Louis. There was a roaring sound in my ears, and everything around me became blurry. I couldn't see or hear clearly, nor did I know what people were saying. All I could see was Floria bleeding constantly, her hand reaching out to me. I held her, tears mixed with blood. Why did you take the knife for me? My throat tightened, making it hard to speak. Her hand touched my face, slick with blood. Don't cry. I knew how it would end before I came. I knew you wouldn't believe me if I told you, so I kept it from you. I'm from the future. In the future, you gave me your heart. You were my hero. When I went back to the day I first met you, I realized I could finally do something. She coughed heavily. I tried to call 911, but she stopped me. It's no use. In these last moments, listen to me, Caroline. I never saw you as a servant. I saw you as a true sister. I knew I might die, but you would never abandon Louis. So, I had to come with you. I'm glad. This time, it's not you who dies. I'm sorry. In the past life, I owed you so much. I didn't know you loved Louis, and Louis loved you too. I knew he married me out of pity, but more importantly, I had your heart beating in my body. I was just your stand-in. I shook my head desperately, unwilling to believe any of this. Louis never liked me. It's always been my one-sided love. Hot tears flowed from the corner of Floria's eyes. So in this life, I tried to fix everything. I intentionally told Louis the love letters were from you. I knew Disneyland was your regret, so I suggested it. Selling the tavern wasn't to look down on you, but because those people were truly terrifying. If you didn't leave, you would never have peace. However, I messed everything up, every single thing. When you told me you wanted to avoid me, I thought to myself, I don't care about you or whether you end up with Louis. Her attempt at a light-hearted demeanor only made the pain in my heart worse. She was trying to explain every grievance I had. The people who harmed me didn't die, but the one who loved me suffered because of me. I was so foolish, and you were too. I pressed on her wound, crying, stop talking. I called an ambulance. You can be saved. Please don't die. Caroline, Floria's voice grew weaker. I'm too proud to live disabled, relying on others for the rest of my life. She wiped the tears from my eyes and forced a weak smile. Consider it my wish for you to live happily with the one you love. Her watery eyes grew hazy, her smile froze, and she became still. The wind blew softly. Sirens wailed in the distance, and Floria's last breath left her body. All the criminals were caught. Louis had lured them into a trap, sustaining only minor injuries. The cops told me that those thugs had a grudge after causing trouble in the bar, especially since several got caught when smashing the place, leading to other major cases in questioning. Almost none of them got out. The ones left hated me so much, they wanted me dead to vent their anger. When I reunited with Louis in the hospital, we held each other tightly. The warmth from our bodies completely made me understand that surviving such a tragedy and clinging to each other was not as shameful as I thought. But Louis and we now had an unbreakable barrier between us. After Louis and I helped Floria's family with the funeral, we lost contact. Life returned to normal. I graduated smoothly, switched jobs several times, but was unsatisfied. Finally, I ended up helping at my dad's bar. It was then my dad found a small box under the bed. The box was beautiful, with excellent student souvenir printed on it. It seemed to be left by Louis when he stayed here. I brushed off the dust, took a deep breath, and opened the lid. Inside, I saw an old yellow daisy hairpin. My hand instinctively reached for my hair, then I remembered, this was years ago. The hairpin I had tossed into a corner was now here. I picked it up and noticed a sticky note underneath. The note read, "You looked really beautiful that day." My body trembled uncontrollably, like losing something precious. I felt a pang in my heart. That day, he complimented me. The hairpin I threw away, he picked up. I couldn't wait to search further, as if finding evidence. Under the note was a wooden plaque with a red ribbon tied to it. I recognized it from the temple we visited. Though some words were faded, it was still clear. I hoped to be with Caroline. He hoped to be with me. Idiot, you can't take wish plaques home. See, it didn't come true. I held back my tears and continued. Below was a diary, nothing else. Louis did have a habit of writing in a diary. I saw him several times sitting on the floor, leaning against that old bed, meticulously writing and drawing in his notebook. I opened the first page. It was hastily written, looking somewhat agitated. "Isn't the heater giving summer air in winter?" I chuckled and turned the page. "Today my junior gave me a love letter. Though another girl claimed it was hers, I recognized it as Caroline's work. She doesn't seem to like me. Is there anyone who can resist my charm?" There was a big gap before the end. "If I reject her friend, will we never cross paths again?" Floria almost died from a glass of milk. Though she wouldn't say, I guessed. I believe Caroline had her reasons. I'll atone for her sins. Turns out it was for me. She kept avoiding me. Does she really hate me that much? But I still like her. Those thugs keep causing trouble. What happened next? The middle notes were torn. I anxiously flipped to the last page. It earnestly read, 1,000 times. I'd save you from fire and water. Tears fell on the old ink, and my mind suddenly cleared. Could Louis have traveled through time too? As I was deeply pondering, someone knocked on the door. I hastily wiped my tears on my sleeve, put down the diary, and walked out, calling, "Sorry, we're closed today." I looked up and met a pair of handsome eyes. The summer breeze tinkled the wind chime. He spoke, "Long time no see. Long time no see, Louis." My lips twitched, even my tear glands strained, holding back the urge, holding back my emotions. In the end, I ran towards him. He opened his arms as if waiting for me a long time. That afternoon, we finally spoke the unsaid words from years past. I didn't hate him, and he never looked down on my family. I mumbled about my past unspoken crush. I was insecure, scared to confess my feelings. "Let's get married," Louis said. I stopped my next word midway, choked it back. "You're not joking." I think today's arrival of Louis felt like a prank. "No joke. If you lack courage, I can wait." "No, I don't want to wait anymore. Because of my lack of courage, my past 2 lives were too bleak. I don't want to be a coward anymore. I want to marry you, without hesitation." "Caroline," I looked at him. "Can you say I love you?" His gaze was deep. I shyly lowered my head. "On our wedding day, I'll tell you." Louis's family busily planned our wedding, like the night I lost hope. But this time, the bride was me. The eve before the wedding, I brought the wedding dress, carefully chosen days ago, back to the bar. I told my dad to rest early. Tomorrow would be busy. I bought fried chicken, a bottle of wine, and went to Floria's grave. These years, big events and small, I like to visit Floria's grave. Today, I had to tell her I'm marrying Louis. Could Floria still be jealous of us now? Does she have another chance? If possible, I wish she could be like me. "Floria, did you know, Louis actually liked me too. We both liked each other. If we were braver back then, how many fewer detours would we have taken? Floria, I'm getting married tomorrow. Won't have time to toast you. So let's drink early." As it got late, I felt a bit tipsy and checked my phone. It was nearly 4 a.m. Enough talk. I still need to get makeup. I don't want to be an ugly bride. I planned to call Louis, asking how preparations were, but couldn't reach him. "Sorry, the number you dialed is unavailable." I double-checked his number. It's correct. I've called it before, even a few days ago. Back at the bar, I entered to find the wedding dress lying cold on the table. The bar stood eerily empty, without a soul. The cool breeze sobered me up quite a bit. I decided to call his parents. It was pretty late, so no one answered the first time. I called again. As soon as the call connected, I heard Louis's mom crying. "What do you want from us? We're already suffering so much. It's all your fault. Why wasn't it you who died? Why?" The voice abruptly stopped, like someone had taken the phone away. Then the call ended. I stood there, stunned and clueless. I hurried to my dad's room. The wooden door creaked. A faint light from the morning sun shined into the small room. The bed was neatly made. On the wall above the bed, there was a black and white photo. In the photo, my dad was smiling, just like he always did when he smiled at me. I took that photo when I got into college. A man with a mental disability, who sometimes didn't even know if his business was making or losing money, managed to earn enough for my college tuition. I finally remembered. He overheard my conversation with Floria that day in the kitchen. Without thinking, he grabbed a kitchen knife and dashed to the steel mill. He collapsed in a pool of blood and never got up again. The gang leader grabbed me by the neck and dragged me to a grassy area. The gang leader shouted into the tall grass, "If you don't show yourself, I'll torture her and then finish her off with one strike." I'd rather die than have Louis do anything more for me. But he stood up in that grassy field anyway. As they dragged him by his hair, I screamed my heart out. They stomped on him, trampled him. That knife pierced his heart too. When he died, he stubbornly kept his head turned toward me, unable to pass in peace. Eventually, they dragged me into the grass. I walked out of the room numbly, hearing the voices of everyone from before. That lunatic, always wandering around here. Her dad died. Her friend died. The guy she liked died too. Total jinx. Look, the lunatic is looking at wedding dresses. Thinks she can still get married. She looks pathetic. Just give her one of the dresses we're gonna throw away. I laughed out loud, picking up the mirror on the table. In the reflection, I saw a face covered in scars, tangled hair like a bird's nest, with just a single yellow daisy hairpin on the side. The sun was about to rise, and even the wedding dress on the table caught the light, looking so beautiful. I gently touched the white fabric and carefully put on the wedding dress. The wind chimes by the door jingled, almost like they were playing a wedding march for me. Barefoot, I stepped forward, each step taking me closer to Louis. By Floria's tombstone, I finally saw Louis's familiar face and unforgettable name. Oil had leaked into every seam of the dress. I flicked the lighter. The wedding march rang in my ears as I wore the most dazzling wedding dress. "Louis, my love, I'm here to marry you."